owning a franchise as a franchisee is a business in a box. It's like a toolkit. It's like a gym membership for business success. But ultimately, we know if somebody joins a gym, they get access to all sorts of equipment, trainers, coaches, and routines, but they still got to be the one that shows up every day and puts in the work.
Welcome. I'm Ryan Hicks, and this is Modern Business, the podcast to learn from franchise business leaders and explore new business technology. Our community is about sharing knowledge and tools that help us achieve our goals in business and beyond. Thanks for being here, and welcome to Modern Business.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we have the president and co-founder of the nation's largest and fastest growing junk removal and moving franchise, Nick Friedman. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So, Nick, for the three people listening that don't know your business or your story, we're going to chat a little bit about that. But I wanted to start with sports, because I think you grew up in the DC area, then you moved out to California to play basketball. How did sports influence you while growing up, and what role did that play in some of the lessons that helped you as you became an entrepreneur?
Great question. I would say I had hoop dreams growing up. I had aspirations of playing, professionally at some point, like a lot of kids do. And the unfortunately wasn't naturally blessed with a lot of height or jumping ability or speed for that matter. So it was not in the cards for me to move further. But what I wasn't blessed with I guess natural God-given talents, I think I made up for a lot with hard work, perseverance, persistence, and just kind of hustle and grit. And that got me as far as it did, into college to play basketball, which was a huge first goal of mine. So that taught me, number one, the power of just sort of persistence and hard work, and it can make up for a lot of lack of, talent or natural gifts initially. But then certainly on the competitive side and the teamwork side and working together for a common goal and understanding team dynamics and how, yes, it's important to have the best players, but also having the players that can trust one another and believe in each other and kind of believe in the process to achieve goals. All of those things are transferable into business. And I use so many sports analogies in our business because, sports is fun. It's a game. People can relate to it. People do it as a hobby. People watch it as a pastime, and, work and business, as they say, art imitates life, life imitates art. It's really, sports is an art form. And so I think there's just so much overlap that you can draw analogies from and connections to, and it makes it a lot of fun. I'm sort of living out my dreams of being an athlete or being part of a sports team by applying the same sort of principles and challenges and best practices from sports into our business. So it was a huge motivating force for me and lesson along the way as well.
Yes, very, very well said. And I agree with that 1,000%. I was in the same situation. I was never the biggest player, never the strongest, never the fastest, but I would work super, super hard and absolutely transferable. But that obviously oozes out of you, like that hustle, that motivation, and really that leadership that I think that you learn on the court or on the field. And, everybody's striving for a common goal, but with what you've done in your business, it's super, super impressive. And I want to talk about how, for the folks that might not know kind of the founding story or how the company began, how did you meet your business partner? How did the business get started? And what was that trajectory like in terms of like when you decided to start franchising? Was that in the mix as you started? But what does all that look like?
Yeah, so I met my business partner, Omar, actually in 10th grade. We started out as friends, and we actually met in detention, ironically enough.
Was that in high school or college, 10th grade? So.
This was in 10th grade of high school, so we were 15 years old.
Got it.
And we went to colleges in different states. He went to the University of Miami. I went to a small school out in California, like you mentioned, to go play basketball. And the summer before our senior year of college, we were back home in Washington, D.C. for summer break. And we had always been brought up to Colorado to follow the traditional career paths of getting a job, getting an internship, building up your resume. But this one summer, Omar's mom had this beat up cargo van from her furniture store. And she basically said to Omar, why don't you go use the van to do something and productive with yourself and make something happen. So we were sitting around the living room table and we said, we can haul people's junk away. We can move people's furniture. And his mom is actually one that came up with the name initially. She said, College Hunks, we will haul your junk. And we all kind of busted out laughing. And then we realized there was kind of a catchy, ring to it. It's not what people typically associate with movers or junk haulers. So we put it on computer printout flyers, put it in people's mailboxes, recognized that people had a need for the service. They sort of had a fun reaction to the name. So we went back to school our senior year. We ended up writing a business plan, and it won an entrepreneurship competition. So that gave us a little more confidence in the idea. And then we graduated, and we got corporate jobs briefly and decided, let's take the business plan and make it a reality. So we quit our jobs, and we started doing the work full time. And I always tell the story, we were hauling junk, driving the truck, answering the phones. We had the 800 number on the back of the truck routed to our cell phone. And so whenever people would complain about our erratic driving, we'd be the one in the driver's seat answering the phone, on the 800 number, apologizing, saying, we don't condone that type of driving in our company. We'll tell those guys to be safer on the road when they get back to the office. So, kind of faked it till we made it and fired ourselves at least 3 or 4 times that first summer. And one of our mentors recommended to us a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
Yes.
Franchise book that people are very familiar with. And that was a big light bulb moment for me when I read it, because of course the message in that book is all about working on the business, not in the business, and creating processes and systems so that your business could scale. And it talks about the franchise revolution within that book as well. And so that was kind of our introduction to franchising. And we knew if we were ever going to have another location, or I should say another truck, let alone another location, we had to have systems and processes for how the business would grow. So that was over 10 years ago. And of course, no overnight success happens overnight. It's been a long journey, but we now have over 100 franchises around the country. We've got a 200-person call center in Tampa, Florida that fields the calls for those franchise owners. We've got, probably over 1,000, 2,000 really at this point, team members around the country working for our franchisees and thousands of trucks. So it's been a great journey ever since those early humble beginnings with that beat up cargo van.
I love that, and I love how authentic and transparent you are about that. People calling and you're just doing whatever you're doing, everything you're doing what you could to make it happen. So a lot of people liken the jump off of the entrepreneurial cliff. You go jump off and then you figure out how to build a flying device on the way down, and that's a lot of how entrepreneurship feels. And I'm asking this question with 2 audiences in mind, because we have franchisors that have, folks that are maybe looking to franchise their business that listen to the show, and then we have folks that are maybe in that day job that are considering becoming a franchisee, and they're maybe afraid to make that leap. But for you, whenever you made that entrepreneurial leap, what was it? Was it that your business had a great trajectory and you think you had a great opportunity? But what were the different things going through you and Omar's mind whenever you made that jump?
It was kind of a bit of an unsettling hunger in our stomachs of lack of fulfillment with the corporate world as soon as we graduated college, and not really feeling excited about looking into our future with what the sort of corporate path was going to lay out for us. And so I remember emailing Omar again about 3-4 months after we graduated college and said, hey, what's our timeline for starting this business on a full scale? This corporate gig is really not fulfilling for me. And he emailed me back, all capital letters, my timeline's right now, ! Let's do this. So we kind of motivated each other. And of course, we did see some raised eyebrows when we told our friends and parents what we were going to be doing. People kind of said to us, wait a minute, you're going to quit your jobs to do what? Haul junk? And, the company's going to be called what? College Hunks? Are you going to throw away your college degree to start a trash business? Is that really what you're going to be doing. And, again, we kind of used that as motivation and fuel for us to prove the doubters wrong. And we kind of had at that point a lot of drive and ambition and vision to create a national brand. Of course, as I told you in the earlier story, when we first started, we were doing all the work ourselves. So it was certainly a jumping, off the cliff and then figuring out how to make it work from there because, we didn't have any formal training or systems or processes like, our franchisees do today. So, I think the key is, having the confidence and sort of the clear vision of what you're looking to create, and then having enough drive, but also enough sense to bring people around you to help you figure out how to make your vision into an executable reality. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, full on, and if you're going to be a franchisee, really the key is just understanding, are you going to have the grit and the persistence and the patience that's required of making any business venture successful? Because owning a franchise as a franchisee is a business in a box. It's like a toolkit. It's like a gym membership for business success. But ultimately, we know if somebody joins a gym, they get access to all sorts of equipment, trainers, coaches, and routines, but they still got to be the one that shows up every day and puts in the work. So, if somebody's thinking about, quitting their job to buy a franchise, they got to be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that system works for them.
Dude, that was a really wicked analogy, and thank you for the soundbite that we'll probably use and recycle on different social media channels. But that was really, really good. You mentioned people around you. Obviously, that's critical. And when you're coming into a franchise organization as a franchisee, you've got that support system. You've got those folks around you. Whenever you're becoming you're a brand new franchisor, you're starting to franchise the business. Going back in your experience in those kind of formative early years, who were some of the folks or partners or conferences or things? What were some of the most important things that you learned, and kind of who helped guide you and shape you in that process?
What we did is we went to a lot of the International Franchise Association conferences, breakout sessions, training and mentorship programs that they have in place for early stage or new or aspiring franchisors. We met and talked to successful franchisors. We read books. We listened to things like this interview and just tried to clue into all the sort of success best practices that people had implemented to make themselves successful. And we tried to emulate that. I mean, at the end of the day, we had a formula for a brand and a service, but the toolkit for franchising has already been created. And so we just needed to make sure we learned what that was and that we followed it almost to a T, and then put our own, kind of creative spins on it as well. We also joined a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO is the acronym, and the Young Entrepreneurship Council, YEC. Those were kind of in the early days when our business first crossed over the $1 million revenue mark. We were able to qualify for those groups, and kind of we were surrounded for the first time by, I would say, our entrepreneurial peers, and be able to learn and share and get ideas and best practices from those folks as well. And then more recently, we joined, I think you and I were talking about this earlier, we joined YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which is kind of a level up from the first two organizations that I mentioned just in terms of qualification criteria. And again, it's surrounding yourself by people that are doing it, even if they're doing it in a different industry. They're dealing with the same issues, whether it's people issues, whether it's process or systems or marketing or finance. They're going through or have gone through or will be going through the same challenges that you are. And so that's just been really, really helpful for us. One person in particular in the franchise space that's been very helpful for us is Shelly Sun. She's the CEO, founder of Bright Star Care. We read her book early on, and to me, that just laid out the blueprint of how to franchise your business. And so we've been very engaged with feedback and advice from her as well. So we've been students. I would say, I didn't become really passionate about learning until after we started the business. I mean, I went through the motions at school, but there was never anything. I kind of looked at it as more of like a a necessary thing to do, but not something that I necessarily was passionate about doing. And then once we started the business, my learning had an actual purpose to it because I wanted to help my business grow. So anything I could do to learn and get an edge to apply to the business, I was all about it.
Yes. And by the way, we will link to Shelley's book. I actually have the book as well. We'll link to that. We'll also link to yours. I'm going to bring that up here in a couple of minutes because I want to first talk a couple of more things about the business, then we'll shift over. I got a couple more questions. But a lot of people don't know Hunks, Hunks, actually as an acronym that you guys, I think, came up with a long time ago. What is that acronym for the folks that don't know?
Yeah, so Hunks stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. And it's an acronym, and the idea behind it is that we are sort of redefining what people's traditional imagery is of a hunk. You know, when we first started the company, we actually didn't have that acronym, and everybody would ask us like, "Oh, is everybody going to be buff? And is everybody going to take our guys going to take their shirts off when they move? And you know, how do you hire? Can I be on the interviewing screening team?" And we didn't want the brand to be too viewed as just a gimmick or viewed as sexualized, to some degree. And so we wanted to sort of broaden our definition. And so what we did is we came up with that acronym, which really to us is our brand promise. It's what separates us from your typical moving and junk removal company. So on the surface level, when people first see the name, it's kind of funny, it's catchy, it's tongue in cheek. They're like, "Oh, that's cute. That's different." But then when we get to talking to a customer or in front of a customer, and we can explain to them this acronym, you kind of see their light bulb go off. It's like, "Oh, wow, you guys really represent more than just strong dudes. You're actually separating yourself from an imagery, a branding perspective, a service perspective." And that's what, clients are buying, is that trust and care factor. So that's actually worked very well for us. I got to credit Omar, my business partner, for coming up with that, because we were sick of everybody asking us about the company name. We were like, we need an acronym for Hunks. And so that's how it all came about.
That's awesome. You mentioned, so it's a brand promise. It's a differentiator. How are you using technology as a differentiator? And you mentioned something that I think the market resonates with, is because if you look at the industry, quote unquote, traditionally, it might be associated with maybe some dishonesty and yada, yada. So you kind of built trust into that brand promise, and that's really neat. But how are you using technology to gain an edge, and technology to advance the business forward and to help your franchisees set themselves apart in their local markets?
Yeah, I mean, we're very much a technology-enabled business at this point, and we've been fortunate to get some really creative and innovative and somewhat entrepreneurial, but also talented technologists in our company that sort of understand the model, understand the client's expectations, and can design technology solutions that help improve the client experience, improve the franchise owner business efficiencies, and also can help them manage their frontline teams more effectively. So we've developed really a in-house proprietary platform that integrates our call center with our clients, with our franchise owners, with our Hunks, with the customers, and it's all connected now through a mobile platform where the customers can get a notification when the guys are on their way. They can get a profile of who's going to be showing up at their door. The guys can process payment, and it all filters back to our central database, or we can see the reporting. And so it's been an evolution. I mean, don't get me wrong. In the early days, I had all these ideas of what we could do with the technology, but we didn't have the resources or the means to make it happen. But over time, we've been able to get the right people, and we've made some mistakes and bumped our knees a few times with different vendors that didn't work out and so forth. But now it definitely is a competitive advantage of ours, and it was something that we set out as an intention to do so.
Love it. What does the future look like for you guys? What are some of some of the goals and what type of partners are you looking for? Franchisee wise. Yeah.
Oh, franchise. So, so for us, our vision, we have sort of an ideological vision, which is to become an iconic brand, something that's recognized more than just the service that we offer, but, the purpose driven element of it, the sort of the core values based element of it, the socially conscious based element of it. But from a size standpoint, we're a little over 100 franchises today, and we think we're going to grow more in the next 2 to 3 years than we did in the first 13. So we expect to have over 200 franchises in the next, 2 to 3 years. We expect to make sure that the franchise owners are averaging at least, $2-3 million a year in average unit franchise volume. And in order to do that, we've got to get the right franchise owners. And really what that means is, and in the early days of franchising, you don't have this luxury. We felt, to the same trap that most franchisors do, where you have to sell it to anybody that's willing to buy one. But now we can be more discerning and more discretionary about who we let into the franchise system. And it's so critical because you need people that are going to, be successful, have the potential to be successful in the business, and then B, believe in and resonate with the core values of your company. If you can do that, it's definitely a recipe for success.
Love it. You wrote a book. You and your business partner Omar wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about that and where folks can get it. It was Effortless Entrepreneur, correct?
Yes. It's called Effortless Entrepreneur. It's kind of an oxymoron because, of course, nothing is effortless about entrepreneurship. But, the idea behind the name was that, like any sport or, professional athlete or artist, when they're kind of in the zone and really at the top of their craft, or in the flow of their what they do, their performance, it looks effortless. It appears effortless and probably feels effortless to them because they've, put so much work in the background. So that was kind of the notion behind the name. The reason the book came about, we were at a conference and one of the speakers said, anybody who's ever written a book says they wish they did it 10 years ago. So whatever you want to write about it today. Don't wait 10 years from now to write it. And so we kind of took it literally. We went to the bar right after that speech and we're like, well, I guess we got to write a book. And so we said to ourselves, what is it that we wish we knew, or what should we write about it? And we said, well, what is it we wish we knew then, back in high school and college that we know now, having been in the business world for a few years. So we kind of wrote it as a handbook for, what had been some of the keys to our entrepreneurial success thus far when we wrote it. But I read it more recently again, and just I feel like the principles in it are pretty universal and timeless. So that was kind of the motivation behind it, and it's served us well. We share it with our franchise owners when they come into the system, so they can get a little bit more of a feel for how the business, the business heritage and some of the keys to success in this business and so forth.
Two observations in that. One, you and Omar are very good at titling stuff, at naming stuff, because the title is good, because everyone wants the easy cake, right? But entrepreneurship is absolutely not effortless, so it is an oxymoron. And second, you guys are not afraid to jump in to things, and that's admirable, and you guys have done so well, and kudos to what you've built. The second follow-up question I have to that is, you mentioned the zone in sports. That was the first question that I asked you about the kind of formative days and how sports played a role in entrepreneurship. And then you just made that, that analogy, that reference. When you look at sports and you're in the zone, I remember I played baseball, and there would be a certain routine that you would have and the routine that you would do at the plate. And that's kind of meant to, in the same way that golf players, it's the same every single time you step up to the ball or you step up to the plate or a free throw. You got the same routine because it just helps kind of bring you back into the zone, and athletes know that that's what that's for. As an entrepreneur, what helps get you in the zone for whatever it may be? But do you have any routines or this or that, or what helps you get into the zone?
That's a great question. And I really don't have a great answer for you. What I've been trying to do more of, and I'm not great at it yet by any stretch, but I think it is effective, is I've been trying to do more sort of mindful meditation and or mindful breathing and not, for extended periods of time or anything, crazy, or challenging, but just, 5 minutes of silence and just kind of breathing and trying to clear my thoughts or focusing on, my being present. And that helps at least, I think, ease some of all the swirling thoughts and sometimes anxiety that builds up as an entrepreneur. I'm tethered to my cell phone. I'm always scrolling through my messages and checking the social media, and those things, just can be so distracting. So to really, I think, be in the zone, if you're going to, have to dig in and focus, whether it's going to give a speech, or going to, really dig in on a certain project, I think having those sort of that moment of silence and quiet, reflection is really important. And athletes do that too as well. That's something that they do in the locker room before they go out for a big game. And I think that can be very effective.
Love it. That's a perfect answer. And I know in today's world that we live in, there's a lot of really neat tools, apps, and different things like that. There's guided meditation apps. Maybe I'll link to one or two in the show notes for the different folks, because I've actually had some people in franchising. I'm in a little group, and we were recently sharing back and forth some of those apps that are neat, that kind of guide you on mindful. You can literally take 5 minutes, focus on your breath. There was actually a quote, I think it was Jay Shetty or whatever the guy's name is. I see him on Facebook all the time with his viral videos, but he talks about how he spent 3 years living as a monk. And if you think about it, the only thing that you have with you your entire life, from the second that you're born to the second that you leave this earth in this form, is actually your breath. And isn't it funny that when you get flustered, or whenever the pressure's on, or this or that, or, you're feeling anxious or whatever it is, the first thing that's affected and constricted is your breath. And so it's like a very deep, almost spiritual thing to think about that. But mindful meditation and taking a second to focus on breathing is actually super, super powerful. That was a really good answer.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Last, any parting words? I guess we'll wrap it up here out of respect for your time. But any parting words to folks that are maybe looking into your system or looking to jump into franchising? Any parting words or graduating speech for an onlooking potential franchisee or franchise entrepreneur?
The pieces of advice that I would suggest is have patience, but be persistent and driven at the same time. So it's kind of a delicate balance, because what drives you and what motivates you is going to help make sure that you work hard and don't give up. But you can't get discouraged if you don't have the overnight success. They say no overnight success happens overnight, and I can be a very living testament to that. It's just a function of time and hard work, and eventually you'll start seeing the fruits of your labor. So that was my only piece of advice, is when my younger self, when we first got started, I would get discouraged. When we weren't making as much money as we hoped we would, as fast as we hoped we would. And no entrepreneur, at least very few, have ever said I made more money faster than I ever imagined I would. Most of the time, it takes twice as long and it twice as hard. So just kind of keep that in mind and have that mindset as you're going into it, and enjoy the ride, because it's definitely a journey.
Great advice, Nick Friedman. Thank you very much for joining us today, and you're welcome back anytime. We'll do a follow-up sometime, but thank you so much for joining.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Cheers.